Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be discussing one of the most highly requested topics I've had for a video, that being the best Thomas and Friends episodes from each season. Now, around 9 months ago, I uploaded a video called The Worst Thomas and Friends Episodes from Each Season, and that has quickly grown to becoming one of my most popular videos in recent times. And with it being so popular, so many people requested that I do the inverse of that and discuss the best Thomas and Friends episodes from each season. Blah. And that is what I'm going to be doing today. I'm really hoping that this video won't be as long as the worst Thomas and Friends episodes from each season, because that was a pain to edit. But anyway, we have to lay down a few rules for deciding the episodes. So first off, it has to have a good moral and actually teach kids something, because remember, this is a kids show. Second, it has to, look good. Having amazing visuals goes a long way for creating a good story. Third rule is characters. Do the characters act in character? Like, for example, an episode like Edward Strikes Out, Edward acts totally out of character, so you will not be seeing that episode on this list. I'm sorry for spoiling. When judging these episodes, there's one very important thing to remember, and that is entertainment. I will be judging these episodes over how entertained I am while watching them. If I'm not entertained by a story, then I'm not going to have a good time watching it, even though it might be one of the best written stories ever. If I'm not entertained while watching it, then there's no purpose. And the final rule is, of course, personal bias. You have to remember that all of this is, of course, just my opinion. I didn't choose my favorite episodes from each season, as these are the episodes that I consider to be the best ones, not my personal favorite. But of course, personal bias is going to come into consideration when deciding the episodes. And those are all of the rules I have for this list. Well, let's just get right into it and talking about the best Thomas and Friends episodes from each season. We are of course going to start by talking about Season 1. Now, many of you might expect that I chose the Flying Kipper, and I understand why. It has amazing visuals and a cool crash, but that's really all there is. There is no real moral to the episode. Like, what? Frozen Point is bad? Yeah, we already know. If you think the Flying Kipper has a moral, I dare you to comment down the moral of the Flying Kipper. Do it right now. Do it right fucking now, you little bit. The episode that I chose for Season 1 is Dirty Objects. And that's for several reasons. One, the characters are so good. James and Toby's dynamic is just so fun to watch. And that is a factual statement. Like, you cannot deny that James and Toby are not a fun dynamic. Second of all, it has really good visuals. The set design in Season 1 is really charming to me, at least in my opinion. And the crash, many people say that the Flying Kipper was the best crash of Season 1. I disagree. Dirty Objects has the best crash of Season 1. I love it so much. The way James flings up in the air and then crashes down. If the driver and fireman were still in the cab, they would be dead, and I find that hilarious. But the thing that makes this episode better than the Flying Kipper, at least in my opinion, is the fact that this episode actually has a moral. And the moral is don't be a dick. That is a very regular moral to most orderly written stories, but it's a good moral, especially for kids. And that's why I think this episode is just a fun episode. You basically get to watch James be a complete asshole, but then get his comeuppance in the best way possible. It is a really good episode, and if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Go watch it right now. Otherwise, I'll come to your house and shoot you. For Season 2, I don't think I have to explain myself. The best episode is, of course, Edward's Exploit. This episode does everything right. It has amazing visuals. The storm and the sets of Season 2 are just great. It has a great moral about never giving up. While it's basic, it is good to teach kids. And of course, all of the characters are in character, which is a really important thing. Edward really proves his worth in this episode, and makes the other engines shut up when he gets back. This episode is really good, it's charming, it has great visuals, and a good moral. So yeah, it's the best of Season 2, I don't have to explain anymore. Speaking of not explaining, guess what episode's going to be the best for Season 3? To all of you who guessed that Escape would be the best episode of Season 3, you're right, of course it is. I don't have to explain myself on this one. It is just so great. The real life influence of this episode really shows, and Oliver is just such a cool character, and it has a great introduction. It also has Toad, which automatically makes it the best episode. But what I think really shines in this episode compared to the original story is Douglas. In the original story, it starts off right when Douglas arrives on the other railway, but in the TV adaptation, they actually add a scene with him and Edward, and I think that adds a whole lot to his character, and it really helps to establish the moral of this episode, to not look down on others and help other people, and I think that is really good. So yeah, it's a good episode, I don't have to explain anymore, just let's go to Season 4, okay? Season 4 honestly has a lot of great episodes. It was honestly really difficult to choose just one. It was very easy for me to find the worst episode, but finding the best episode, all of the episodes in this season are great except one, like they are all really good. So instead I decided to choose the one that stood out the most, and that episode is Special Funnel. Special Funnel is honestly just beautiful. The sets, the mountains, all of it is just beautiful. The music is great. And honestly, I really like the snowing aesthetic in this episode. This episode is a follow-up to the episode Trucks, where Peter Sam had his funnel damaged, and honestly it's just really good to see continuity. Honestly, I really like the way nature is used in this episode. Bad weather is what caused the bridge to break, and an icicle is what caused Peter Sam's funnel to fall off. All of these things are from nature. The ending of this episode is also really great. The way Peter Sam gets his new funnel and performs better than the other engines is really good, and the way it was set up with the other engines teasing him, I think it was a really good ending. Honestly, Peter Sam in this episode is just wonderful. I really like him. For Season 5, much like Season 4, there were a lot of good episodes to choose from, but I think the episode that really spoke to me at least was Duncan Gets Spooked. This episode plays with atmosphere so well, the nighttime shots are gorgeous, and the whole idea of if the ghost engine was real or not is never explained, which gives you something to think about, which most other ghost stories, which, just to say, spoiler, we are going to talk about at least one other ghost story. Anyway, what I like about Duncan Gets Spooked, compared to the other ghost story that we'll talk about, is that Duncan Gets Spooked keeps the mystery of the ghost engine alive. It doesn't tell us if it was real or not, and that's what I like. I also very much like the beginning half with Peter, Sam and Rusty, and the runaway sequence. That was very much fun. Season 6, at least in my opinion, is a very underrated Thomas season, but I think everyone can agree that Thomas and the jet engine is an absolute banger. This episode needs a motherfucking reward for being unironically funny. You got moments like,
"Want a race, Thomas? Beat Bertie?" Never mind.
And even moments like,
"Hi Gordon, bye Gordon,"
that really make this episode special. These moments are just gorgeous, and it's funny that it's only in this one episode. Not that many other episodes try to be funny, but this episode tries and succeeds. I think the whole idea of a jet engine is so fun. You can question the logic of why is the jet engine fueled. I do not care. This is not realistic at all, but it's fun. Well, let's just go with that. It's all fun. I think many people will be surprised of the episode that I chose for Season 7. I think many people expect me to choose an episode like Gordon and Spencer, and I do really like that episode, but I decided to go with 3 cheers for Thomas. You might be wondering, why did you choose this episode over any other Season 7 episode? Well, it's because this episode is just so heartwarming and a brilliant finale to the classic era of Thomas. You have moments like Thomas and Bertie's race, which is a reference to Thomas and Bertie. You have Thomas getting a medal. That is really cool. I really don't like the US title, hooray for Thomas. I think 3 cheers for Thomas just works better. This episode is just really nice, and it shows Thomas's character growth. In the original Thomas and Bertie, Thomas won the race. But in this episode, he stops to do a more important job and allows Bertie to win the race, which kind of evens the playing field. Now Thomas has won a race and Bertie has won a race, so that's really nice. For Season 8, I decided to go with Halloween. I know many of you probably predicted this, but I do honestly think that it is the best episode of Season 8. It offers a lot, with interesting music and character combinations, like Thomas, Emily, and Ari and Bert. I think that's pretty cool. I really like the ending chase scene. I think that turned out really well. One thing I really liked about Duncan Gets Spooked is that in that episode they keep the mystery of the ghost engine alive, while in this one they tell us, the audience, that it was Emily all along. It would have been a fun plot twist with all of the engines thinking that it was Emily, then Emily arriving on screen and saying, "Hey, what have you guys been doing?" And then the mystery would still have been there. But you know, it's still a good episode in my opinion, so I'm not gonna dock it too many points for that. I do still think that this is a really good episode, and definitely the best episode of Season 8. For Season 9, this may be an obvious pick, but I'm choosing Respect for Gordon. This episode is really good. This feels like one of the only episodes in the hit era which really utilizes the new runtime. Like, you think the episode is going to stop after the crash where Gordon has had his comeuppance, but it just keeps going, and we see how the Steam team handles Gordon being gone, and the way they actually begin to actually respect him, and that's really good. Speaking of Gordon in this episode, he is perfect. He is pompous, he is arrogant, but he also understands when he did something wrong, and he actually apologizes. Actually, all of the characters are perfect in this episode. Percy, Thomas, Emily, they're all perfect in my opinion. I cannot talk about this episode without talking about the crash. The crash is so good, and when I was younger I thought that jam was blood, so a little bit violent for young me. But in short, I think we can all agree that this is the best episode of Season 9. For Season 10, there really is only one episode I could have chosen, and that is Duncan's Bluff. I agree with most of the fandom's opinions on this episode. It has a really unique character pairing with Duncan and James, and I really like it. Their dynamic is so well done. Both of their characters are in character, which is a rarity for the hit era. If this was a classic series episode, it wouldn't be anything special, but the fact that this came from Season 10 with such good writing is amazing. I'm not a huge fan for the gauge free prop for James, but I can overlook it as at least James is in character, and so is Duncan. I really like Duncan in this episode. His devious side really shows through in this episode, and I like that. Overall, I don't have much to add to this discussion of Duncan's Bluff. I just think it's a really good episode. It honestly amazes me how many of the episodes on this list are either Thomas or Duncan episodes. I guess I'm just that biased, and I'm not going to stop because for Season 11 I chose Cool Truckings, which is another Duncan episode, but we also have a new character, Madge, and I think their pairing is so good. Duncan being like a little devil on Madge's shoulder is really good, and I think the dynamic works so well. The road sets in this episode are really unique and cool, and I really like that Madge sprayed snow on a police officer. That was really unexpected, especially for the hit era, so that's really fun. I think the episode has a good moral of peer pressure and stuff, so it wins on that part. Honestly, I'm amazed that the hit era manages to do so well with Duncan. Like, how did you mess up so many characters but get Duncan so right? We have arrived at the final season of the hit era, season 12. And sadly, none of the episodes in this season are that good, but I do think there is at least one that stands out, and that is James Works It Out. I think the reason this episode stands out is because it expands on a hit era character from a previous season, that being Hector, and I'm amazed that the hit era actually did this and expanded on Hector's character after season 11. I don't know, is anyone else amazed at that they actually continued and had continuity with previous seasons? I don't know, they did have Great Waterton, which is continuity with the Great Discovery. I still think James is perfectly in character here. I think the Free Strike formula works a little bit better, but it's still a season 12 episode, so there's not that much to praise. So, I know a lot of you were expecting season 13 to pop up, but sadly I had to split this video into two parts. One, because, well, for my own mental health, so that I don't have to work for like a 30-minute long video. And two, because Tank Engine John teased his video, and I gotta get this video out first to make sure that I do not look like a copycat. Okay, good, we're settled, so stay tuned for part 2.